Today we start in the last in series of roundtable discussions on careers in test QA leadership. And the topic for today is, do you need to be a great tester yourself to lead great testers? My name is Ann Roisman. I'm the founder of Test Masters Academy. I'm leading this discussion today, and I would like our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves and what job are they doing right now? What's their work title? So we can understand your position, where are you coming from? And we start with Valery.
Okay, good morning or good day, everybody. So my name is Valery Burmistrov. I'm originally from Russia, but for the last 4 years I'm living and working in Germany. I'm working in TeamViewer GmbH company, and I've been pretty much several years. I have been in QA pretty much all my life. I've been several years engineer, and then several years as manager. And now my working title actually changed last 2 months from Director of Quality Assurance to Director of Development. We had some reorganization, and now we don't have a separate department of testing. It's fully community of practice, and yeah, that's the story.
Okay, thank you. And Tomas, you next.
Yeah, also, I have a change. Good to meet everyone. So I reorged myself out of my company into a new one. So I was formerly senior application architect in charge of enterprise automation at Huntington. And as of last month, I took over a role as manager of validation and delivery at Designer Brands. So I have all the QA folks, in addition, ops and prod support. So this is similar to Valery, growing the sort of practice of quality across all teams.
Great. And Christine, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Christine Fisher. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I work at the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. I currently am the manager of a team of business analysts and quality assurance analysts. I have never actually held the job of a QA. I've never had that title. You can't find it anywhere on my resume until I moved into this position. And so I'll have some insight today on maybe what that's like.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Olli, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Olli. I'm from Denmark, where I'm sitting right now. I have a long career being a manager myself, but never within IT. So to be quite frank, I don't know anything about IT. As a joke, I usually start telling that I use a Mac for a reason. Apart from that, what I do is I'm the founding partner of my company called Lange & Rasmussen, where we work with managers in all different kinds of organizations. That's managerial development and developing the organizations. And then I also teach at some of the public educations in management that goes from the lowest level to the highest university levels.
Thank you very much. And obviously my first question is the title of this roundtable discussion. I do have an opinion, and I'm going to hold to my opinion because I don't want to, to move you into wrong directions. So today we're going to discover the experiences, discover the truths, and maybe I'll change my opinion. So we'll see what happens. So do you need to be a great tester to lead great testers? Valery, we'll start with you.
I actually have opinion that it's more no than yes, but there are like several buts to this. So if you are a manager, or like a leader or whatever, like formal, informal, it basically you need to project some kind of influence, or some kind of people need to respect you, and they can respect you either for being a great tester yourself as well, or it could be something else. And if that something else is then meaningful, you don't need to be a great tester to then be like leader, formal or informal for testers. And that's like roughly one part of my answer. And second is, I have been for this, doing this for too long. I like to think that I am a good now person to be like a supervisor or manager or leader for some people who are doing testing, but I cannot boast that I'm a good tester myself, because last time I was doing it professionally myself is already many years. So I like to think that I'm actually a good person to lead, but I'm not a good tester myself anymore. So I like so if I'm doing my job right, then the answer is no. I'm not a good tester. I'm not a good tester myself, but I like to think that I am a good person to lead other testers.
Okay, thank you. And Tomas, what do you think? Do you need to be a great tester yourself to lead great testers?
Just in short, no, I don't think it's a necessity. As a manager, or you could say as a leader, coaching and facilitation are two large components of that role. And you don't need to be an expert in an area to help empower others who are experts to do their job well. And, sort of the contra of that, we see a lot of examples in the professional world where the best people at their given role don't necessarily make the best leaders. A good example of that, not to go all Malcolm Gladwell on you, but is Wayne Gretzky, arguably the best hockey player of all time, terrible hockey coach. And so just because you have that skill set of, one area or another doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be great at leading others when you assume the role. So I think as long as you have these other skills, you don't necessarily need to be the best tester or best developer or best project manager to be effective in your role.
Thank you. And Christine, what do you think?
I'm going to have to go with no, like I said, because I've never been a tester. Unlike Valery, who said he thinks he was a good tester at one point, I have done some testing. I can work through some manual testing, but I know that I wasn't good. My background is business analysis. And so I get too hung up in the details. I don't have that mindset that a great tester needs to, figure out where they can be a little fuzzy with some of the details, where they can balance that risk. But I'm aware of that, and I know what I look for in a good tester. And with what Tomas and Valery said, I want to coach, I want to mentor my people. I have the vision of what our team is doing. And so I want to put people in the right spot to utilize their skills and help them grow as a tester. So I hope that I am leading them well, but I myself am not a good tester.
Thank you, Christine. And Olli, from your position of coach to managers, coach to leaders, what's your perspective?
Well, I must say I agree. My short answer is no, and I partly built that on the evidence from there's a tool that we're using here in my company called developmental leadership, and it's built on a lot of research, loads of research, and in that it says that everybody can become a manager. What it doesn't say is whether you can become a good or a great manager, but you can become a manager. So that kind of points in that direction. Another thing is, of course, I have my experiences being a manager myself in different kind of organizations and the different levels. That tells me that you don't have to be a great whatever football player to be a great coach. But another thing is, if you investigate the characteristics of the top managers, like globally, and other people have been doing this, it's becomes quite clear that what makes them the great leaders is their personal competencies. It's not so much their practical knowledge about the things their people are doing, but it's their personal competence, and that's what matters the most. In an everyday language, that would translate into being likable or trustworthy or authentical.
Thank you. Okay, so my next question would be, if you are not yourself a great tester, and all of you said you don't need to be, how do you recognize the skill of a great tester that because there are some could be characteristics, so like the person may not be able to communicate well, and I've seen that as a manager, or being a disruption, and I've seen that as a manager, or trying to like do whatever they want to do, and I've seen that as a manager. So how do you recognize the skill of a great tester? And I'll start with Valerie.
That's actually a more difficult one. Okay, let me tell, actually. I think it's a good one. And let me explain why it's a good one. Because I think actually, and I was clear with the people here, I have not been actually very good at this during my, in the last 2 years at the TeamViewer. Let me explain why. I had actually 17 or 18 direct reports. So we had a very flat organization, and I did not have actually, on one hand, on the other hand, they were all in different, mostly in different teams. So I did not manage more performance. So I pretty much was helping people based on their problems. I did not actually assess their performance or who is doing what. I couldn't get to this level. So as such, what I was doing is more actually learning and development plans, and less of actually pair testing, all these things. I would love to have been done this, but I was not actually doing this. So I think to an extent, my answer is actually I was not doing much of that. Maybe, and there is good thing and bad thing about it, right? So some people then don't need any help or any would not have benefited from the deeper involvement of me. But maybe some people could have benefited from that, but I was not there from time perspective, but also then maybe from the skill perspective to help on this. And this is where I think that what actually Chris said, it's actually very much resonates with me, because actually my goal was to provide the vision for the crew, for what we want to do. So for us, it was frequent releases and what comes to it. But then I was not. I helped each person to actually create their learning and development plans. So then it's their vision for themselves. But I did not deep dive into this much. So to an extent, my answer would be that I did not do this much. So there is some good parts of that, but some bad parts about this. So.
Okay, thank you. And Tomas, what do you think? How do you recognize the great tester if you're not the great tester yourself? How do you recognize the skills?
So, I think there's some sort of common attributes that we can apply to great testers, such as someone who is analytical, not just in their ability to review, expectations versus reality, but understanding the context of how your user is interacting with your system. Someone who's also potentially technical, that individual understands how the back end of whatever system you're testing work, what the true intent is behind it. And then some sort of natural characteristics, folks who are inquisitive or passionate, reflective, able to look at their own work and look at work of others with a sort of peer review. And I think one of the overall, what we can apply to pretty much every single job in which you have to interact with people is ability to communicate effectively. So those are what I would say are sort of core traits of a tester, period. And if you excel in those traits, I think that's how you become a good tester.
Thank you very much. And Christine, how do you recognize the great tester, being not a great tester yourself?
Sure. So as a BA, I really relied on my testers, and I valued what they did and what they brought. And there were always things that I was looking for from my QA support when I was getting my requirements tested. And like I said, I recognized that I wasn't a great tester because as a BA, I get caught up in the details, and I want to make sure everything is covered and that everything is documented well. And so when I have somebody who can walk me through and say, hey, we don't have a lot of risk in this area. They understand the application. They are more comfortable with that risk. There's a good balance there. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm also looking for, like Tomas said, somebody who is inquisitive. When you have testers who say, I like to break things, that's great. That's not how I think. So when I am looking for a great tester, somebody who can bring those things in to balance out the analytical side of the requirements and to help communicate with the developers and kind of, pull all of those pieces together. That's really what I'm looking for. But just somebody who thinks about it a different way. And I usually find that I can ask questions if I'm interviewing or something from a BA perspective and see how they would respond. And that usually tells me a lot about that candidate and what their skill set is.
Thank you. And Olli, from your perspective, as a leader, as a manager, how do you recognize somebody who is the great at what they do unless you master it yourself?
Well, not knowing the IT business from the inside, I would have to guess, but my best guess would be an innovative team player. I think that's two universal competencies that we need nowadays, and I believe we're going to need a whole lot more in the future. Being innovative, meaning being able to look at the different perspectives and try to put things together in new ways that can help us. And then being curious and being able to join a team and be a part of a team. And in that respect, a team where you understand that nobody is better than the rest of the team. You have to be a team player, and you depend on each other.
Thank you. And my next question would be, how do you promote the skilled testing skills of a tester to your management? Since you kind of working with a team who are maybe great, but the manager may not recognize it, and you are the communication channel between them and the upper management. How do you do this? And I'll start with Valerie. How do you promote skilled testers to managers?
Sorry, I mean, promote skilled tester? I mean, when the people do great work, or the skill of the...
Yes, how when they do great work, and in general, how do you persuade the managers that they need great testers if you're not an example of those?
1 second.
Maybe I should break it down. How do you promote the testers, like the great workers? How do you promote them? How do you describe them to managers? How do you say to manager that, hey, those are the people you want to keep?
Mm-hmm. I think the best thing that everybody can do is actually there is a trick here, which basically the trick is to do it. So normally when I meet with my boss, it's like, what do we go through? So we go through, okay, what is the current things? What are the maybe issues? What are the problems? Usually, and it's a tricky thing, this thing to kind of promote, to put this thought in the head of my manager that this person did great, this person is great. Unless I deliberately do it, it does not necessarily pop up. So my manager wouldn't ask me about this. So I guess the best trick about this is to actually actively promote, to put it in the head of your superior or whoever you want to put it into, that we that this person is good, or this person did that, or this now the QA did this or QA did that, and stuff like this. So and we need to consistently do this. So I try to put it basically on my agenda with my superior boss. I report to CTO, and I always try to then to use lunch for talking to different people from different parts of organization, and I use that to promote. So that, I mean, in a way, there is no trick to it particularly about testers, so about particular what I talk about. The trick is to just do this, because normally it's not done maybe to a big extent.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Tomas, how do you promote the skill testers to managers?
That's, I think, been the biggest challenge of my career, because I've been in automation the entire time I've been in IT, and upper management has always sort of had the opinion of, all right, what can we do to cut resources? That's the key word, resources instead of people. And all right, they're trying to reduce the number of people that I'm trying to support. And, persuasive arguments can work with some, but what I found that speaks most directly to them is, since they are primarily concerned with budget, is you directly addressed it in terms of the value provided by these testers exceeds, the cost of you having to pay them and their insurance and all of that. And there are many ways in which you can do that, some of which is just purely for quality control exercises of, hey, like, what defects are they finding? What would be the cost of that defect if it made it to production? But you can also look at it in terms of the sort of QA exercises of, where do we have process inefficiencies that these individuals can help us reduce the amount of rework that we're doing, to help us improve our delivery pipeline, to help make others more effective and collaborate on the team. So those are things that, as much as I can do, I try to attach dollar values associated with that. So that way it allows me to advocate for those testers in terms of their individual careers. I create career development plans for them that very clearly lays out where they are providing value and why it's important for them to get an investment from the company in terms of continuing education, be that workshops or external training, going to conferences or professional groups. Attaching that dollar value, I've found, has had the greatest success. It seems a bit dirty to have to play that way, because quality should always be an upfront concern and something invested. But I work with the system I'm given, not with the system I hope for.
Thank you. And Christine, how do you promote the skilled testers to management?
Sure. So I am super busy, and my boss is even busier, and it's very natural to just focus on when she and I sit down for our status meetings, to just focus on the issues, whether those be, operational issues or people issues. And so I always, like Valeri said, want to make a point to point out the positives, what's gone well, what people are doing, what new things they have tried, anytime we have some testing success. So we are in the middle of our DevOps, CI/CD, digital transformation at our organization. And we recently had some great catches with our automation test on one team, where the test did their job and, they failed the build, and we were able to go back. And for one of the first times, it wasn't just an issue with the test, it was an issue with the code. So it's like, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to here, but we haven't done that at this organization yet. And so it was a great win for what they are doing. So not only did I tell her, I told the architects on our team, made sure people knew, made sure the testers knew that I was bragging on them, but I also put it out in one of our IT Slack channels. That gets a lot of hits on it, where our CTO is, and just let people know, hey, we're all in this together, but we had some success. And that felt good for those people who did that. We had 2 automation engineers working on that, and they felt really good about that. But that's visibility to them, and letting people know that they are adding value to this organization. And that's, in the long run, going to help our client. And that's what the most important thing is.
Thank you so much. And Olli, I know you're not in IT, but somehow you ended up speaking at our conferences, which is IT conferences. So stop being that modest.
Okay, I won't talk. I won't tell anymore. No, well, actually, I'm quite. I'm with Chris on this one. I'll just say, show don't tell. So to speak, let them maybe not present, then at least co-present, but at the best let them present. Your co-workers, let them go to upper management, let them present it. And if it's not in your culture as a manager, because a lot of managers, they have this pretty strong narcissistic need to be in the center of everything and believe it, they're the sun, everything is turning around. They really should leave that and stand aside and let their co-workers do at least some of the presentation, because that would be the way to prompt them. And in the end, as a manager, you're no better than your employees. So get the best of your employees promoted. No, not promoted, but get them, let them show off to top management.
Thank you. And I want to tell our attendees, so you can write your questions. If on the bottom of your chat, you're going to see all panelists and attendees in a two area. And please start writing your questions, because I will be asking those questions to our panelists. But my next question is still my question, which is, how can you coach somebody to be a great tester? Be great in what they do. Not everybody already coming to you as a great one. And if you're their leader, then it seems to be in your power. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that it's in your power to create somebody great. So how do you approach that? And I'll start with Valerie.
I have actually a good opinion on this one, which when I was young, that's how I became when I was I joined without any experience, and I started and I learned somebody from basically much working together with somebody, and that somebody was more senior than me, and I learned from him, from her, everything that I could. And then when I was engineer, then I learned from working with more experienced, more senior person, like a senior engineer. And then I was working with a more senior person. This is how I learned everything. So for me, by far, the best thing which I can do, and I do this, is to pair. So to pair, work with somebody together. And again, in my organization, that would not be me. But I would really recommend to do this pair testing, to do the mob testing. All these things are exactly, in my eyes, is the answer on this one. And especially now that, in my organization right now, the QA is community of practice. That's exactly I'm ranting about it now. It actually becomes problematic if you are part of some engineering team and there is one, you are a single person doing the QA. It's actually quite problematic because there is no, you are not in a testing team, you are an engineering team. It could be becoming a problematic. So I try to maybe invent this, that people maybe even jump from team to team, or it's actually a real problem for us, because I do believe that the best way to learn is to doing something together. And so now within my organization, it's actually even problematic. So yeah, for me, it's working together with somebody who has more experience or different perspective on things, maybe a different background, but fundamentally more knows more. And this is how you learn.
Thank you. And Tomas, how can you lead a tester into greatness if you're not being one yourself?
So this is one that I learned from trial and error, mostly a lot of error at the beginning, and then improved as I grew. And at the beginning, I would throw help at people, as in I would schedule trainings for them at their desks or in side rooms and give them the training and just presume, all right, once I give it to them, they're going to adopt these practices. And I did not have that same sort of success as what I expected going in. And what I had to learn was what really drives the individuals I want to help and coach. And I really take, sort of a great background in terms of helping me learn was from Intrinsic Motivators at Work. That book taught me to find out what is going to actually drive people, whether it's a sense of mastery or they're looking for a financial reward, or in terms of community involvement. And when I can identify that within individuals, then I can help them develop a sort of training plan that empowers them instead of throwing help at them. And that can involve various things of either engaging activities like, peer testing, or establishing a mentor for them, creating SMART goals if they have trouble with deadlines, attending conferences, professional groups, putting on group workshops that encourage people to come together and collaborate, bringing in external speakers, just different activities in which you are providing them these opportunities to add value and grow in ways in which they have targeted, as in what is their own career goal. And that I found is more successful in that it drives better engagement as well as by empowering the people, then you end up having those allies who are going to work with you. So a number of people on my team have originally joined my team in Huntington and came over and joined me here, that these were folks that were purely manual testers that wanted to learn automation and be part of that growth in the industry. And, they look at, in terms of their own career of what do I have to do to accomplish that? And they're sort of self-sustaining at this point in terms of continuing education. I don't have to direct them. They are self-directed at this point. And all of that comes from finding out what is going to be their sort of intrinsic motivators and then providing them those opportunities to be successful.
Thank you. And Christine, how do you make the tester great? How do you coach, lead?
I agree with a lot of what Tomas said. You need to know the people. So I think that a lot of how you make somebody great is, first of all, you just have conversations with them. And that's in their status meetings or, just at their desk and getting to know those people and where are their interests? Is it moving from manual to automation? Is it sticking, with manual? Are they afraid of automation? And we're not in a situation at my company where we're forcing everybody to move to automation. And so that's fine. But once I kind of know what they want to do and what they feel good about, then it's finding ways to support them. We're lucky where I am now, and we usually have money for conferences and for workshops and for things like that. So letting them explore what they want, but also sometimes pushing them towards some things that maybe they didn't want or didn't know that they wanted, to challenge them, to ask them often about what their career goals are. What can we do to help you move toward that? I want my team to think of me as, their ally for their career. And if they are doing a good job, if they are here, if they're showing up, if they're doing their work, meeting their deadlines, all of those things, and I'm not talking about those people who might be just struggling with performance, then I'm going to help them move as far as we can, because I owe that to them. That's part of my job, is to help expand their skills and make them better at what they do.
Thank you so much. And Olli, how do you make somebody great not being great yourself?
Well, there's a lot of research that says that we learn the best when we're in a positive environment, and that would be a good place to start. Ensuring, and that's the manager's job, ensuring that you have a positive environment, and that means having a environment at the workplace where you find yourself in a psychological safe place, a place with trust. That doesn't mean that you have to kind of nurse your employees all the time. You of course, you have to challenge them. You need them to develop, and to do that, you need to challenge them. But don't over-challenge them, and don't kick them around for making mistakes. Make sure you have an environment where it's okay to make a mistake, not all the time, but once. Maybe twice, but at least once let them make mistakes and learn from it. And if you have this positive environment, they would not only learn from that, but their colleagues would learn from it, because in an environment like the one I'm thinking of here, you share not only your successes, but also your failures. So everybody learns from them.
Thank you so much. And the question came from one of our attendees: how to promote quality assurance as a discipline to the management who does not know, value, or share our QA vision? It's an interesting and very, very hot question. How do you promote QA, quality assurance, to management who doesn't share the vision? I'll start with Valerie.
I think actually partly it's a little bit what Olli just said actually contributes to that. It depends on how serious the situation is. If the management fundamentally does not appreciate this, does not value this at all, maybe that's actually the problem to actually attack head on. Especially if you are a manager of this testing organization, or the organization as a whole needs to attack that, because otherwise you cannot win this battle, right? And if you are in a position to basically do this, I would go with what Tomas earlier just said, to try to speak their language. Perhaps it's the money language. So fundamentally, the QA or the testing, it's all about like risk management, right? And there is you try to associate the like monetary terms associated with that. So what value is then the organization is actually bringing, which then the top management can understand. So it could be risk mitigation, could be, I don't know, just like safety net. It could be actually like there are some like research which you say by doing QA, you are basically then improving efficiency. So it could be different things. But this is what I would then go. And again, if I were to start this conversation, I would actually start not by promoting. I would start to having the conversation about, okay, what is the expectation? What are the problems actually, which potentially are problematic, and what is then like either there is a problem and the QA can solve it, or there is maybe no problem, or where I will try to actually understand where the upper management is coming from, and I will try then to base my like promotion or like whatever the story is. I'll go what Christine said. Actually, I have a vision, but then vision needs to kind of match towards what the upper management thinking is. Otherwise, I would be just talking about something which they're not interested or not understand. I need to then speak to them in their own language. And yeah.
Thank you. And Tomas, how do you promote quality assurance as a discipline to the management who does not know, value, or share your QA vision?
In short, I can just say ditto. But a more expansive is using that sort of empirical evidence for the management to show the value for quality assurance, whether it is, as was previously mentioned, in risk management or in change management. And there's certain measures you can use as a baseline for your organization, whether that be the lead time for you actually delivering a defect discovery that you have, the amount of rework that has to be done by your development team members. There's a lot of space where you can look for that baseline measurement to see where we are having issues. And if you're not sure where to begin, it's just simply chatting with people outside of, say, even your organization to find out where do they have issues. Like, people love to complain, so they will more than tell you what's going on. And then sort of reference that against benchmarking for other organizations that are in a similar line of business to find out what they do well and what they do not do well. And that allows you to put together sort of value proposition for, okay, this is where QA lives and this is how it's going to help us get better, whether it's simply improving your app store rating or reducing the lead time for you to deliver to production, to minimizing the amount of time that we have to go between sort of project instantiation to actually like seeing those requirements hit the team. So there's a lot of areas where QA can provide value. It's just you have to collect that evidence, put it in a format that upper management can understand and deliver it to them. I was told often that the best way to go to upper management is to present the information to them in a USA Today style infographic.
Yeah, totally works. Okay, thank you so much, Tomas. And Christine, how do you promote quality assurance as a discipline to the management who does not know, value, or share your QA vision?
So the example that I have actually is not somebody who didn't understand the value of QA necessarily, or thought that they didn't add value to the team, but we were in a situation last summer where there was someone at our organization, like, oh, QA is going to change, things are going to be automated, your jobs might change. We don't really know what that'll look like, but DevOps, right? It's all about DevOps, and things will change, but we don't know what that is. And so I had a conversation with him, and I was like, so this is actually very scary to people when you're telling them that their job might change, but you can't give any details. He's like, well, we're just going to, test should all be automated. I'm like, well, I don't agree with you. And, so we had this conversation back and forth about, why maybe that didn't work in this situation, because we have these people that we are going to take care of. That's what our organization does. We're not just going to say we're not a tech company. We are a company with a large tech department. And so we're not going to just say everybody has to learn automation, or we're not going to, just write automated tests. And he and I just had a different vision. And I think that one of the things when we were talking and I said, okay, send me somewhere that has a structure similar to ours, where this is working, where these jobs might be different and they can define it a little bit more for me. And then we couldn't really come up with a place that was doing that. And that's okay. But I think once he understood kind of where I was coming from, that helped with what we were doing, and to see that we have a lot of good people here. We don't have resources. I'm glad that Tomas called that out. We have good people. And so we need to help them find a way to change their job. We need to, help them find a way to keep up with this new world that we're going to live in. I think that in this example, I was very lucky to be able to have a very frank conversation with somebody in upper management. That's not always a luxury that people have in their organization, depending on how big you are, how many different layers you have to go through. But just talking about what it's actually like on the floor, like these people who are doing their job every day. What are they doing? How do they feel? And what value are they bringing? And so that's a little bit of a different answer, but I think that that's important, is that we need to be aware of who our people are. And if our intention is not to just get rid of everybody and start over, then how do we make this a place that advances all of us? And what do we do for that?
Thank you so much, Christine. And Olli, I know that I need to rephrase it a little bit, but because you kind of looking at it from systematic, generic perspective as a management trainer, how do you promote the quality and the need of a discipline of a quality to the management who does not know, value, or share your vision?
Well, obviously they can't see the meaning of it. Then that's where you have to kind of that's what you have to poke. You have to make them see the meaning of doing this or having this facility, and of course that's easily said. But one way could be by trying to make it positively and personally interesting to them. And if it's not possible to make it a positively interesting thing for them personally, then you could try and use the burning platform. I'm not really that fond of it, but it could be your last resort. That would be maybe showing them what would happen if they don't have this thing.
Okay. And my next question would be the challenges. What were, and this is your real experience now, what were the challenges of leading great tester, and how do you overcome that as a leader? And I start with Valerie.
Challenges.
Was it always a pleasure to lead great tester, or there was some challenges in how you manage them? How do you lead them? How do you develop them?
I think, maybe it will be a general answer. I'm a little bit like being the first one. I'm a little bit on the spot, and then people try to talk, and I be like, yeah, that's exactly what I also wanted. It's a little bit tricky for me. So let me start with saying something. Maybe some other thing will then pop up in my mind. I think in general, so pretty much it's also one challenge is for it's not necessarily related to the discipline. I think it's generally, as Olli said, it's all about this people skills. It's about then emotional intelligence, these things. So as such, especially with the great people, you need also I strongly believe that all the people, beginning level people, more senior people, everybody can benefit from a great supervisor, great mentor. But then I pay attention to particularly I try to put myself into the shoes of the person and try to see, how can I help this person? And I have not been doing this when I was beginning level manager, I must confess. So it's really like I made all the mistakes which then beginning people do. I judged everybody the way I judge myself, and the way I did not appreciate it at the beginning of my career that people are different than me. So I did all the kinds of mistakes. So now, more and more, I try to think that I'm not as judging. I'm trying to then look at people and not judgmental, but try to see them as they are. And this way, as I said, I'm not now into the performance management much, but I'm actually asking everybody to have these performance development plans. I'm pulling this, so I feel strong that it's actually I don't have a format for this. I want that everybody tells me a story. Okay, what are you what do you want to accomplish? What is your story? And there are absolutely different answers, absolutely different formats, and people tell me different things. Somebody can tell me, okay, they want to learn automation. This is okay. Somebody told me, okay, I fear for my job unless I do this automation thing. Somebody tells me, okay, I want to do exactly what I do and don't leave me. Okay, for me, it's most important. This is what they want. It's not necessarily, I don't apply the same stick to everybody. And from this direction, if you are a great tester, so then how can I help? And I think also in my experience, sooner or later, the list is not empty. So somehow I found myself to be valuable for most of the people. But that's I guess a generic answer. Maybe when people start talking, maybe.
It's perfect answer because there is no wrong one. Because this is the experience, request from you. So, Tomas, challenges of leading great tester, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Sure. I will speak of failures because I think that'll be more illustrative, both a personal failure and then an organizational failure. And so in my prior role that I was working with a lead, and this person, if we were to rate sort of the technical skill set, probably be 100 out of 100 if you had to rate them. But from interpersonal skills, lacking. Or as we say in corporate speak, there's room for improvement. And so this person was challenging to work with, both from their peers and also individuals underneath them. And they really took the opinion of, all right, there's two ways to do things. There's my way and then there's the wrong way. And so I really found it challenging to work and interact with this person, especially when it comes to, say, from automation, architectural decisions. How do you work with someone who is not going to shift on their position, who's intransigent? And what ends up happening for that one, this is a lesson for failure, is I did not take the time to learn more about that person's background, their motivations, what's going on in their life that leads them to behave this way at work. And that person ended up leaving. So I'd say it could be considered a net loss for our organization because we lost probably the most talented person in my area. And, there's a lot that sort of fits under personal responsibility, but also it works both ways. From both sides, you need to learn about someone's background, their motivations, and help foster sort of a positive relationship. And so that was the lesson from an individual. Now I can speak more directly from an organizational issue. And so I started last month, and at my current company, they went 3 months without having a manager for anyone who is in the QA space. And suddenly they hear that not only are you going to have a new manager, but you have 7 people that you consider to be SDETs coming to jump in. Now, put yourself in the position of those people who are existing. You're going to have a new manager after having no manager for 3 months, and you have a bunch of people who have the specific skill set joining. Of course, they're going to be worried. Of course, during that time of no manager, they think, what is my future here? And so even though I started off with having a big catered team lunch where I publicly addressed any concerns, had them do private writing, I thought everything went well. And then I went to a vendor meeting, and in the middle of the vendor meeting, I received an email that the first contractor had resigned. So like, great start. And, since that time, I had another contractor resign because they had already put into motion the job search and got full-time positions elsewhere because they were worried they did not have that feedback from managers. So we're losing potentially like people that we would invest in long-term because the communication wasn't there. And I'm trying to take the time now with each person, whether they're full-time or contractor, and sit with them and help understand more about what their career goals, what their worries are, as well as try to get to know them outside of work. So I try to rotate holding lunches outside of the office and take them with me so I can find out more about their family, what their hobbies are, and try to build that sort of personal bond with them. So I have to rebuild trust. It didn't matter that in my prior role that I didn't try to move to fire anyone, or that I invested hundreds of hours from my own time training people one-on-one. The trust is for the old company. It's not with the people in the new company. They don't know me like that. And so you have to build that trust to then help foster the relationship and help them grow and help them realize that you're in this together and you are truly working as a team. And so those are my 2 lessons of failure. Learn from them, hopefully.
Thank you. And Christine, the challenges of leading testers, and how do you overcome them?
So my personal challenge right now, not only am I not a tester, let alone a great tester, I'm not even a tester, but I'm also not technical. So really, I'm just kind of a mess here. But my team knew that about me. When I interviewed for this position, and I've only been here about a year, so they knew that I didn't have a testing background. They knew that I also didn't have a technical background, and I've always been very upfront about that. So gaining the trust, kind of like Tomas said, and not just that personal connection, but also that they could bring their issues to me and that I could help them. So that was important, is, establishing that trust where they believed that I was guiding them in the right direction. But the other piece is with our automation, and, we're really pushing for that automation right now. And automation is a scary thing. And I think there's been some, if you don't know how to code, which I don't, right? So I can read requirements that my BAs are writing. I can read manual tests that manual QA are writing, and I can give feedback on those things. I can't read their code. I can't give them any feedback necessarily about what they're doing. So one of the things that we've done is we have one of our architects who's really working closely with those QAs right now, which is helpful. And he and I work together, so they're getting a joint message from us, but he's helping them on the technical aspect. But I've had to learn that too, and learn a lot about the testing strategy, because that's where I'm strong, is in process improvement, change management, strategy. So we can't just let you go off in a corner and automate everything, because if we're going to do that, we might as well just sit down and, write a bunch of scripted tests too. Basically, either way, we're going to end up with tests that aren't reusable and that will quit running, and we can't maintain those. And so I think that they're starting to respect that we've put some guidance around those. We have test strategy meetings to talk about, what are we just going to test manually? What are we going to turn into automation? What are we going to do with both? And really talking about those. And that was something that wasn't being done before. So that's been a challenge. And I think I'm working toward that. My goal for myself this year is to be able to put a little bit more knowledge behind the words. So right now I can say, hey, Selenium Maven JUnit, but then I have to leave because I can't follow up that conversation. So that's my goal for next year, but I tell them that too. So they know that it is a challenge for me, but that I am working for them, and to be able to understand their side of the business as much as I hope that they're putting in for me. So that's my challenge, is the technical piece.
Thank you very much. And Olli, your suggestions of how do you overcome the challenges of leading somebody who has the better skills than you do?
By admitting that that's a fact. If you try to hide that, it's not going to work. You have to admit it's, and the hard part here is to admit it to yourself, but then get out in the open and admit it to the employees and say, hey, I don't know anything about IT, for instance, but I do know something about how to create a good workplace. But you really have to admit it. I find that the greatest employees to work with are the ones who resist. And I know some managers, they fear the employees who resist because it's a lot of work. But in a way, it's the most fun employees to work with because there's a lot to work with, and they have a lot of energy. And when they resist, that's just a way of just a way of showing their energy. What you have to do as a manager then is try to understand what's going on, and trying to understand that you do that by asking questions, not trying to just give them the answers they're looking for or just giving orders. You ask them a lot of questions. Those questions should be the kind of questions that make you understand what are their basic psychological needs that are in play at this point. The hardest ones to work with, I think, that's the ones who are undercover resistance, because they do what they're supposed to do, and they never go to you, they never ask you any questions, they never challenge you, but they just do exactly what they're told and nothing more than that. And then they go to their colleagues and they talk about the bad management or the poor food in the canteen or whatever. They're the challenging ones.
Thank you. And the last question, we have 4 more minutes.
Should.
Should I start with Valerie?
In tweet format, right, Anna? In tweet format, we have to answer this.
What goals do you put to testers so they can become great? How do you like not just encourage them and like pat them on the back and say, hey, just be great, but what are the specific goals, some of the goals that you put to testers so they could become great at what they do?
Yeah, I have an answer which basically does not answer the question, but this is what I do. I actually, usually it's like there's like a first layer and there is like a second layer, and the first layer is to basically have the goals, and to basically and second is to maybe like have a good idea what then like this great tester is, and then push a goal. So I must say that I'm starting from the like first layer. So basically I ask everybody to see, okay, what is their definition of great, and what is then what they want to do, what is their like vision, what their aspirations are, and what they would like to do, like this quarter, this year, this like 2 years, where they want to go. And usually, I mean, to be honest, that's already kind of like meaningful enough to basically get going, and I don't usually do much on top of that. Now, there is a caveat in that, is basically then I'm not exactly doing what you told me, which is maybe not the right like answer, but I think there is going back to the like previous, like to the very first question. Really, I think it's important, even though maybe you are not a like excellent like tester yourself. It's actually this. I think there is like a particular capacity which is important to be a great leader of great people, including tester or not everybody. You need to be able to see if the vision is actually meaningful or not. I mean, it needs to be, and you can actually see this by if it's inspiring for a person or not. But if the person is not able to like come up with themselves with a vision, I need to basically be able to then put this stuff additionally. And this is where I think it's then the caveat to the first question. So I need to understand the subject matter. I need to, maybe it's not me being the great tester, then I need to bring others to the picture, but I need to be able to define it. And this is, I guess, is important. Again, in my experience, usually when people come to with their own like needs, desires, and we massage it together, that's quite enough. So I not need to like, I really actually like, I feel strong about like bottom line goals definition, especially for the learning and development, that I don't like put the goals on people. I help them to develop their goals.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Christine now, because we need to break the sequence. What goals do you put to your testers so they become great testers? How can you put the goal like become great? Or is
Right.
there something specific?
There's nothing specific. It depends on the person. I think, again, it depends on what they want to do, and then it depends on how well I know them. So those are the conversations that we have. What are you looking at? I make them goals beyond what our standard kind of performance goals are. So they all have to define their own goals, how they want to improve, and then I can help them find a training for that or push them in a different way. I have somebody on my team who he's doing a lot of really good things, but he is more the stereotypical software guy, right? Like slides by with the dress code and everything. And he's starting to attend some meetings where there are more people. And I reminded him, like, hey, you're more visible now. You need to sit up front. You need to sit up straight. You need to maybe put on a collared shirt every once in a while, even though we have a casual environment. And I think those are things that you do too to help make your people great. It's figuring out where they need help improving, and then you push them. And sometimes that's in the personal space, and sometimes that's with their skills.
Thank you so much. And Tomas, how do you put goals to people to make them great, for them to be great?
In short is, identify what motivates them, their own words through that, and reframe what motivates them into the tasks, the activities, the tools, technologies that they use, as in what they're going to do at work. And then it's my job to be the advocate, to provide them all of those opportunities to obtain those goals, whether that's workshops, webinars, certification training, conferences, whatever it needs to be to fit in with those goals, because they've defined it for me, and I'm going to help facilitate them to achieve those goals as best as I can.
Thank you very much. And parting word, Olli, how do you put goals to people to be great?
In very, very short answer, ask them what they need and help them out.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So we almost fit in all the time that was allocated to us. Thank you so much, dear participants, dear panelists and attendees. You make this great over again. I would love to continue the conversation on leadership skills in software testing and QA. Careers in test leadership is a very interesting topic. I feel that we as a community need to learn those leadership skills, because the job requires from us more of that, more than any other discipline. Maybe product owners do. But I think QA, as much as IT goes, they need to be in leadership position to even in peer leadership, but to promote the quality mindset. And with that, I'm gonna stop the recording. And again, thank you very much, everyone who participated in today's discussion.